less stroke volume. So you're going to have a balance there. But the thicker the blood, the harder the heart has to work. So that's one of the downsides of blood doping. All right, if somebody already has a weaker heart, it's going to have to work harder to move that blood through. So I'll come back to the summary of blood pressure tomorrow, but I want to finish up here. Well, let's just look at that one chart, and then I'll come back to those hormones I wanted to talk about. You have this chart in your lecture notes, but the arrows aren't there. So let's kind of go through that. So up here is the blood volume effect on the heart. Here is heart rate effect and contraction force. So if this is decreasing volume, this is increased. So if you have low blood pressure or too much CO2 or not enough oxygen, or you start to exercise, all those factors are going to increase the sympathetic nervous system. What page is that chart on? Okay, 112. So an increase in the sympathetic nervous system is going to increase both the heart rate and the stroke volume. And both of those will increase cardiac output. Okay. If we change the diameter of our blood vessels, or if we change the thickness of our blood, then that's going to increase peripheral resistance. And either or both of those can increase blood pressure. So it's just kind of a table putting those factors together. So increased blood volume, anything that's going to increase blood pressure, all right, the body responds to by trying to change the stroke volume. So on this side we have an increased force of contraction due to sympathetic. Here we have increased venous return. So those were the two factors that I listed that would affect contractility back, wherever it was, here. So sympathetic nervous system and venous return were our two factors, so we can see that on the graph here. So sympathetic here, venous return here, okay, and the peripheral resistance location there. So we'll look at some examples of these, some questions tomorrow, but I wanted to leave the last 10 minutes just to briefly look at 3 hormones. These are listed in your lecture notes with a greater discussion under long-term and short-term effects. We will talk about the mechanism with the urinary system. Okay? So on page 118 and 121, we're talking about hormones. What I want you to know from those pages is what I'm writing up on the board now. Okay, it will be a much briefer summary. It's the urinary system that they affect, and we'll look at the mechanisms at those times. You're already familiar with a couple of these, maybe all 3. From the posterior pituitary gland, made in the hypothalamus, we have the hormone diuretic hormone. That has several effects. One is to cause blood vessels to constrict. So it functions in vasoconstriction. That itself is going to increase blood pressure because we're decreasing the diameter. That was one of the factors that affects peripheral resistance. So this decreases blood vessel diameter, and that increases peripheral resistance. But the most important mechanism is in its name, antidiuretic. It binds to cells in the kidney and functions to increase the reabsorption of water. If we increase water reabsorption, what are we doing to overall blood volume? It's increasing. So this is going to increase blood volume. If we increase overall blood volume, what are we doing to venous return?
Increase return would be increasing too.
Increasing venous return. If we increase venous return, what do we do to stroke volume?
There we go too.
That goes up as well. And if we increase stroke volume, what do we do to cardiac output?
Going up as well.
That goes up. And cardiac output, along with peripheral resistance, were the two factors that determine blood pressure. So through both of these factors, blood pressure goes up. Now some of it seems really obvious. That's good. The more that seems really obvious, the less you have to dig through and tear apart and put back together again. Okay? The second hormone is aldosterone. Anybody remember what organ makes aldosterone? Adrenal gland. Exactly right. Adrenal gland also works on the kidney. And instead of directly causing the reabsorption of water, it works on the kidney to increase sodium ion reabsorption. You've probably heard the nursery rhyme, Mary had a lamb, or whatever. Wherever Mary went, lamb was sure to follow. Something along that lines. Sodium is Mary. What's the lamb? No, start again. Yeah. Water. So, the kidneys, under the influence of aldosterone, reabsorb sodium ions. That increases water reabsorption. And now we can just follow the same sequence of events as we did with ADH. Water reabsorption increases, blood volume increases, venous return increases, stroke volume increases, cardiac output increases. So both ADH and aldosterone are going to function to raise blood pressure. The third hormone does the exact opposite of aldosterone.
It's gotta be an odd man.
And this is known as atrial natriuretic peptides. Guess what organ makes that hormone? The heart. With too much blood coming back to the heart, guess what's going to happen to the atria? They stretch out. And that stretching of the cardiac muscles of the atria causes the heart to release atrial natriuretic peptide. Natriuretic refers to the element sodium. And so this goes to the kidneys and does the opposite of the aldosterone. It decreases sodium reabsorption. And then everything else decreases as well. So this is going to decrease sodium reabsorption, resulting in a decrease in water reabsorption, resulting in a decrease in venous return, a decrease in stroke volume, and eventually a decrease in cardiac output. So the other two, raise blood pressure This one lowers blood pressure.
Is
All right, 30 seconds to spare.
Is resorption the same thing as reabsorption?
Yes.
This is all going by way of kidney, right?
Yes. Okay, let's take a short break.